Good morning, Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty here to talk about week 30 in Silicon Valley real estate. This is just the slide you'll get when you log on now at the beginning. Here is a quick recap of what we're going to be looking at. It's San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, Alameda County, Contra Costa, single family homes, condos, and townhouses. My base years are 2010 through 2019. So what we're looking at here is the number of successful offers. The red line is a red hot marketplace. The gray line in the center is going to be sort of a balanced, neutral marketplace. And the blue line down here is the minimum number of offers accepted, so a cold marketplace. The purple is the current data line. So you can see we started off between the median and a red hot marketplace, which is the biggest year, which would have been 2021, the pent-up demand after COVID. So we were doing really well. And then you can see right here, right around April the 10th, April the 9th, somewhere in that time frame, the market took a sharp dip down and went from basically above the median to below the median and right at the minimum number of transactions. And that would have been in the last 10 years. And then up here, right around May 10th, we dropped down below the minimum, and that's where we've been ever since. And that's for the 4 counties. Here's the same thing, just a different data presentation. The red line's the maximum. If you were having a completely typical year, you'd be on the black horizontal line. The bottom line is the minimum number, and the purple line is, again, the raw data. So same presentation, just a different way. And here's a third way where I subtract off the delta, and you can see that you were above the median, then you were below the median, and now we've actually leveled off. We got one week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Actually, that's probably 4 weeks. So the last 4 weeks, the market's sort of stabilized after having come down fairly significantly for about 3 months. Basically the months of April, May, June, and July. Well, April, May, and June. And then July was basically a plateau. Here you can see it in table numbers, and that's pretty unattractive, I guess. But you can see we started off the second best years, basically second only to 2021, and that was because of the pent-up supply. We actually, in April, which was where 2021 would have been, a year into it, people were recovering and the demand isn't as high. So we actually were the top year and then quickly dropped down to fifth place, seventh place, ninth place, and then we've been in 10th place out of 10 years. This is the 4 county data broken down. The outside margins are the 4 counties put together. Then you can see the makeup of each county. Won't spend a lot of time, but down here, DUI is basically about 55 days for single family homes, about 60 days for condos and townhouses. Frequency of overbidding is around 60%. The magnitude is down just around 101%, and that's for single family, and the same numbers are over here for condos. Now we're shifting gears slightly, and we're talking about what we started out with, which was macro data. San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, single family homes, condos, and townhouses, different reference period of times, 2015 through 2019. Now we're looking at the overbidding. How much pressure are the buyers feeling? Earlier this year, we were improving when we hit the best week we've ever had, which was March 26, 2022. And ever since, we've been basically turning around and coming down. Now you can see there's a lot of dotted lines clustered together at the top, and that means you were basically at a plateau. There was some week-to-week fluctuation, but no movement from week to week. And then you start getting into the dashed lines, which is the second most recent, basically middle of April on, and you can start seeing that there's some separation. With the solid lines, there's some separation, but now you can see that there's been a cluster, and depending on what you want to call your cluster, clearly 3 weeks right here, but someone could argue that all 5 weeks here are pretty much together. There's some change in the shape, but they're together down below the axis, they're together above the axis. Just right through here, there's a little separation. So for either 3 or 5 weeks, we've had some stabilization, especially compared to the amount of movement we had in the weeks of the dashed lines and the first 3 weeks of the solid lines. Here's the same data, just only 12 weeks. So here you can already see your dashed lines, which are now month of May. They were moving. The dashed lines were moving, and the solid lines are basically all grouped together along with one of the dashed lines. What that's saying is the buyers are still feeling a fair amount of pressure to overbid, but the magnitude that they're overbidding is less, and even the frequency of which they're overbidding is less. Anything time you're below the axis, and the purple is the current data. So basically 40% of the sellers are getting below their asking price, and something like 15% of the sellers are getting their asking price, and something like 45% of the sellers are still getting more than their asking price. Now what we're looking at is the same macro data. We're looking at available listings in the blue line here, and you can see we started off this year with a shortage just around 65, 70% for several weeks. That was up from last year where we were at 80, but then went down to 70, and then went down to 60%, and actually dipped down to 55% of the level of inventory you'd expect to have. Then we started off the year at 65, quickly went to 70, and then right here at week 15 abruptly went from 70 to 80, from 80 to 100%, from 100% to 120. Then some fluctuations. I believe this is going to be Easter if we went back and looked at the calendar, but we've been floating now just shy of 20% more inventory available than you'd expect. The gray line is the number of new listings coming on the marketplace, and that was just about 105% fairly consistently. You can see in recent weeks, you could say that maybe it's at 95%, and I would actually throw out a hypothesis that sellers are seeing the market isn't so great, and they're now a little bit hesitant to come on the marketplace. So instead of coming on the marketplace at a little bit faster than the normal pace because of the great market conditions, they're now hesitant and they're coming on at less than the normal rate. The number of buyers, though, and that's the big takeaway, you went from 20% surplus demand, number of offers being accepted, to a deficit of 20. And that happened basically overnight. You can see it looks like in 2 weeks, you went from 120% in what appears to be week 14 to what appears to be an only 80%, a 20% deficit in week number 16. So it was a very abrupt shift in the marketplace where if you were at 120% and 40% of your buyers went away, that's a third of your marketplace went away basically overnight. And that's basically what happened. Here is looking at days of unsold inventory. This is my single biggest indicator of what the market's about to do. The straight line is 5 days of gain per week, and we were close to that, but never quite reached it. You can see inventory, days of unsold inventory is normally increasing at this time of the year. But the key thing as far as the future of the marketplace is for the last 5 weeks now, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, actually 6 weeks, the market's been fairly stable. And at 55 days of unsold inventory, that's really not a bad marketplace. Now, I will say that in general, the Bay Area spends very little time in a balanced marketplace. It's either in a strong seller's marketplace, a strong buyer's marketplace. We only tend to be in this balanced marketplace when we're transitioning. I don't expect it to stay here long term based on tradition. That's where you would think it would spend a fair amount of time. That's where we've been for about the last 5, 6 weeks. This is looking at the number of new listings on the blue line, and the red line is the number of new offers. And you can see from the most part, we were selling everything that was coming on the marketplace. Now, you don't sell the same necessarily property that came on, but you're selling the same number. So you're not gaining inventory, you're not losing inventory. Beginning part in 15, and now at the end in 2022, you had more new listings coming on the marketplace than you had new offers. That's when your inventory grows. That's how we went from 60% to 70% to 100% to 120% of the expected inventory. We weren't selling as much. And in general, I have the belief based on long-term data that the number of sellers fluctuates a little bit, but the number of buyers fluctuates a whole lot more. This is looking at DUI over time. And here you can see that we went up and then we rolled over and we've come down just a little bit now. And this is Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, single family homes, condos, and townhouses based on a 5-week running number, which is more indicative of the market. 1 week data fluctuates quite a bit and you can't tell as much. What has been unique that I've pointed out before is you have this run up and then a horizontal, run up, horizontal, run up, horizontal. This time we had a run up and actually turned around and went down. That again, in this particular case, a lower DUI is an improving marketplace, is faster pace marketplace. Here's looking at days on market. I don't believe this data tells you very much, but it's widely circulated, so I put it there for completeness. You can see the median days on market was down here probably at 8, maybe 7. We got up to 10, and now we're up to about 13, I think it is. Average went up a little bit from basically 11 to 20, but compare that to my DUI that we were looking at, which went from basically 15 to even hitting 60 and now at 55. DUI has a much more rapid change, much more dramatic change than the days on market, and the days on market tends to lag behind. It's just quoted by a lot of people, so I put it in there for completeness. Now what you're looking at is price, has nothing to do with market conditions, but simply telling you what's happened with price. The bottom blue line is the cheapest 10 percentile, which would be mostly condos because we're including condos and single family homes. The orange line is the median, and the gray line at the top is the most expensive, which would be almost exclusively single family homes. Now, some condos could run around $3.5 million, but there isn't very many of them. But the takeaway is the high end has been flat basically since sometime around October of 2021 and has been flat ever since. The median price went flat, increased in 2022, and now it's coming down and very rapidly approaching the level that we were back in 2021. And the same with the lowest priced homes, but they didn't come up nearly as much. They're impacted a little bit more by the interest rates because if you aren't able to borrow $650,000, you're paying conforming rent loans right now, which are actually quite a bit more expensive than jumbo loans, which is reversed of normal, and the delta is much more. It's almost a full percentage point. With that, I'll pause, see if anyone's got any questions as I go over the URLs. This tiny URL is what I call the root URL. It will take you to the archives on YouTube. If you add 2022 to it, you get to the live presentation Saturday morning at 9 a.m. If you add in the letter H for handout, the 8-digit year code, year, month, date code, 2022 0730, you'll get the handout, which actually this week is up to 50 slides, and we'll get to that hopefully. And any past specific episode can be found there. Do I have any questions from anybody? Not seeing any unmuted mics, I will continue. Now we're moving on to the number of new listings. So the yellow line is the median number of new listings, and this is the 5-year period of 15 through 19. The blue is the actual number. So when you look at it, the data this way, it looks like we've been following, the blue line's been basically following the yellow line. I would say it was slightly above the yellow line here, slightly above the yellow line here, basically on the yellow line here. And it's harder to see in this graph, but I would actually say, especially with the advantage of the other graph, we're slightly below the 5-year median number of new listings coming on the marketplace. And again, I contribute that to the sellers being aware that the market conditions have changed and they're not coming on. They're holding off if they can. Now what we're looking at is the total inventory available. This is the sum of all listings that are available right now in both counties, both types of property. Yellow line being the median of the 5 years, and the blue line being the actual data. So the blue line, you can see you had the shortage at the beginning part of the year, quickly got up to 100%. We're right around 100%, and now you're that 20% above. You can see you're above last year. You're significantly above the data for last year. You know, last year we were at 1,750, and this year we're at 2,500. So not doing my math, that's, I guess, 750 additional listings based on 1,750 last year. It's not quite 50%, but it's more than a third. This is the number of new offers, and this is really what drove the change in the marketplace. You can see the blue line was above the yellow, so we were selling more homes than normal. And then here we flipped over pretty rapidly, and now the blue line is below the yellow, so we're selling less homes. So the market changed because the buyers went away. We could debate why the buyers went away, but it's a buyer going away driven change in the marketplace. Here's geographically your days of unsold inventory. This is single family homes only. You can see that the bulk of Santa Clara County is white. Even the bulk of San Mateo County is white. You have a few standout areas. You have the expensive areas in San Mateo County where it's a little bit blue because it's above 80 days of unsold inventory. And you have 2 areas, one in Santa Clara County, Cupertino and Sunnyvale, and then Redwood Shores and Foster Cities, which is a very small market area in San Mateo County, that are below 40. So they're a little bit red. And when I say 40, it's actually the the color changes at 42.5. This is looking at days of unsold inventory going back in time. You can see how much redder the graph was just a few months ago, back in the month of May. If I was to look at it, it's hard to really tell, but maybe this week here, like July 16th, might have been the palest week. Your blue here is definitely lighter. Your pink is lighter, but now your pink here has come back. You've got a new area of pink down here. And the San Mateo North area is doing so strongly, and those numbers haven't changed. I need to dive into it, and maybe I got it frozen, because you can see it got really pale, and then all of a sudden it's been the strongest area going, which just doesn't make sense, because it's, you come back here, it's never been the strongest area, but it's got very little inventory. So something's going on in the North San Mateo area. That's like Daly City, Coleman, Pacifica, those areas. This is looking at days of unsold inventory. The blue line here is my 5 days per week. We didn't quite achieve that. You can see the horizontal line is just the data repeating, but it makes the data stand out a little bit, and it's easier to find it. You can see San Mateo County's rolled down. You can see Santa Clara County single family homes is rolled down. Santa Clara condos has basically come up. You can see it's the highest at 60 days. Santa Clara County single family homes is probably about 57, and San Mateo County single family homes is probably about 55. And this is based on 5-week data. This is looking at the median days of unsold inventory in the yellow. The blue is the actual data. So you can see last year and beginning part of this year, we were below. Below on DUI is a lower number, a faster paced marketplace, then rapidly went up right in that. Everything changed at the same time, because it was the buyers going away that changed the whole market dynamics. DUI has been above for the last several weeks, and it's leveling off and maybe even coming down a little bit. So the rapid change that we are experiencing in May, June has leveled off now, but you got to be careful on what metrics you're using. Is just because the DUI is leveled off doesn't mean the price drops, and price leveling off will level off. I think the prices will still come down for a while longer. Here's looking at the magnitude of overbidding. You can see Santa Clara County, the bulk of it is now gone to no color, and that's between 99 and 101.5%. Most of them are at 101 point something, but not above 0.5, so they're white in color. If you get up in the West Peninsula area, most of the areas are now at 102 or higher, except for the expensive areas, which are at 99, and the coast is now at 99. So it's just slightly below and the average seller getting their asking price. This is the magnitude of overbidding plotted out, and you can see how dramatically the curve came down in all 3 cases. The condos tend to be more stable, so it doesn't surprise me that it was only at about 112%. Single families in Santa Clara County were the most, about 117%, but you've gone from 117% down to about 103%. Now moving over to just overbidding for the macro data. This is where I put all 4 of them into a blender, 2 counties and 2 types of properties. And you can see the difference between last year and this year. Last year at this time, we were about 107. This year, we're at about 101.5. And again, you can see the drop off just very sharply dropping down. We were up here at 116%, and now you're at 101.5. Well, that's 14.5% of the list price just disappearing. Someone could argue, well, listing agents are listing the properties higher. That doesn't happen uniformly in a big area. So there is a 14.5% decline in property values just by the buyers not overbidding as much as they were before. Here you can see the San Mateo County North area being on fire. Looking at this and going on in the presentation, it's hot in every area. Not only was it the DUI, it's the frequency of overbidding. So I think it's real data. And I think if we went back and looked at the inventory for it, the inventory up there is extremely limited for some reason. And you can see how much of a standout it is. Look at the redness of the intensity of the redness of that versus the paleness of all the others and the amount of areas that are white. Blossom Valley, Santa Teresa, a lot of your moderate priced areas in Santa Clara County are now less than 50% of the sellers are getting getting overbid, 45%. It's still respectable, but it's nowhere near where we were just a few weeks ago at 90%. Here's the frequency overbidding graphically. I changed the order. I don't know if you noticed, I went magnitude first. I have been doing alphabetical order. I'm now doing magnitude first because DUI comes first because it's the most responsive. Magnitude of overbidding is next most responsive. Frequency is going to lag behind, and that's exactly what's happening. This decrease isn't happen as much here, and just people are trained now to overbid, so they're willing to overbid, but they're overbidding by 1% instead of 16 or 20 or 30%. Here's the overbidding, and you can see the fairly dramatic difference between last year and this year. You were somewhere around 80% of the sellers were getting more than their asking price last year. This year, you're down around 46%. Huge difference. And you can see the difference again right here. Everything changed at the same time. And again, it was driven by the buyers going away. Here, you're talking about price. Price has nothing to do with market conditions. It's just telling you the reality of where the expensive areas. So Redwood City is typically the median priced, and it's white in color. If you're above the Redwood City pricing, you're going to be pink in color, with the expensive areas in San Mateo County being the reddest because that's the most expensive area. Likewise, the blue is below the median. The more intense the color of blue, the more below the asking median price of Redwood City it is. The middle numbers are your median. The number to the right is the lowest 10 percentile. The number to the left is the highest 10 percentile. Here is the median only over time, and this is going to be for Santa Clara County single-family homes in the red, San Mateo County single-family homes in the brown at the top, and condos and townhouses. And again, you can see, like, for example, in Santa Clara County, we're back down to the prices we were just at the beginning part of 2022 before we had the rapid run up. So you had the rapid run up, and now you've had the rapid run down. Even the condos ran up and ran back down. San Mateo County, the same concept. We ran up and now we're back down. And we'll see that in a table. Here are the numbers currently. This is based on weeks, so it's fluctuating, but you can see where the peak pricing was. Now, remember on pricing, because you're going to say, wow, these data points are all in May, but you said the market changed in April. Well, it was those people that were buying at the peak in April that were closing in May that set the record high price. And for the most part, we were 40 to 50%, and now you're down to 10 to 20% for the most of the appreciation. So you can see how dramatic the price was. And I'm using the base of the entire calendar year 2020. So the base is real solid. And so the change is since 2020. We can't complain that we've had even 10% appreciation or 11% appreciation in 2 years. That's 5% per year. That's not bad for houses that are supposed to be slow and stable. Long term, I've heard numbers that we typically get 3 or 4%. What's shocking is when you were at 50% just a few weeks ago, and now you're at 20, you've lost 30%, actually 35% in a matter of weeks. Well, it was up there for quite a while, mid 40s. Yeah, 57 was a peak. This is green. I pointed this out. It was a number that was much higher. I looked into it. It was an issue in the coast being very small data set. So the difference between the 28.1 and the 58, I think it was one additional property being reported closed, bringing me down to 28. There was like a $250,000 gap between the two properties. Bringing in that one extra property flipped it, and that's what the huge appreciation is. That's the problem when you use data on small micro market areas. Here gives you a recap. So now you can look at your micro market area, single families on top, condos and townhouses on the bottom, and what kind of conditions. Your DUI is the most important. Magnitude of overbidding gives you an idea of how much buyers are overbidding, and then how frequently they're overbidding, and then what the price that you would experience in that different micro market area. This is looking at the different things. We're looking at inventory. Single family homes in Santa Clara County were at 99.6%. You basically have to call that exactly the level of inventory you'd expect. Santa Clara County single family homes, not a surplus of inventory, not a shortage of inventory. That's why it's black in color. Anything between 95 and 115, I consider to be a balanced market. If you go to San Mateo County, you're basically in a blue marketplace, which is a nice cold controlled marketplace because you have a surplus of inventory. You have 36% more inventory than you would expect to have. So that takes the pressure off. Same with condos in Santa Clara County and the Bay Cities. We don't really talk about, other than to mention the reason those numbers are so high is there's been so many high density condos built in Redwood City in the last several years, in the last 15 years, that are now in the data that weren't in the baseline data. So that's why we're selling more. There's just more units to sell up there. They were all recently purchased, so there's tends to be higher turnover. Your DUI, 55 across the board for the most part. I'm pointing out that Bay Cities is at 37.5. It's the only one that's now in a red hot seller's marketplace. And remember, my threshold is 40. The magnitude of overbidding, right at 100 to 105%, down dramatically from the 116% we're looking at. Frequency of overbidding is still all above 50%. So half your sellers are getting more than their asking price. And here you got to pay attention to the appreciation a little bit. The peak appreciation for 2022 was 44% basically for Santa Clara County. It was almost 25% in 2021. We're now only at 26%. The run-up of this year that we had is basically gone, and we're back down to our peak level in 2021. Now we're still above the norm for 2021, but now let's go down and look at San Mateo County. It was 24% in 2021, 38% in 2022. It's down right now to 13%. Its pricing for single family homes in San Mateo County is below where it was in 2021. Now, this is the median, isn't necessarily based on any one property, and this is appreciation based on 5 weeks. So I've gotten some stability here. It's probably some indication that the market's experienced a downturn. If you come down to the Bay Cities, you actually have a negative 5% appreciation since 2020. The homes that are selling now, and I believe this is again the lowest because of the high density, it's more lower priced homes were built and lower priced homes are selling. I don't think it's property values. And that's, I would say this negative 5% is an anomaly. If someone told me property values were up 10 to 20% for Bay City condos, I would say I believe that based on these other numbers, but the actual number based on median is negative because there's more low-end properties selling up there now. Now we're changing to Santa Clara County single-family homes only, again with the same basis of 15 through 19. Here we're looking at DUI. The black line in the middle here is where you'd expect DUI to be. The red line is the hottest DUI's ever been. The blue line is the coldest it's ever been. So we went from the hottest it's ever been, outbeating any year from 15 through 19. Now 2021 was probably hotter, but that isn't in my reference years. You can see how rapidly it changed. And now we're the coldest, but at least we're not continuing the trend up. We've sort of fall down and we're improving when DUI normally improves. Here's looking at the Delta DUI, and this is just a different way of looking at the same data. I subtracted off the Delta and then plotted the data, and you can see the trends. We were stable, the market shifted, and now the market's improving. And look how dramatically you can see the market improving here. And all I'm doing is taking the raw DUI, subtracting off the median DUI for the same period and plotting that. So yes, we're 15 days slower than we would expect to be at this time of the year, but that's far better than being 25 days slower that we were just a few weeks ago. It's just a different way of plot the data, trying to catch your attention to notice things. Here's the 7-day average DUI instead of just looking at it for 1 day. Here's data that's not really comparing apples and apples, but I'm getting pretty close. These other years are August 5th. This is August 30th. So I need a few more data points, but you look at your inventory, 1,240. It's basically the highest inventory we've had until you get back to 2016. If you come down to DUI, 55, that's the highest days on unsold inventory we had until you get back to 2012. Sales per day, 22. That's the lowest ever. So talk about the buyers disappearing, 22. I don't think, I'm looking again, I don't see any day that comes close to 22. The lowest number I'm seeing is about 30.1, 31 days on unsold inventory. Got a 28.4. So clearly the buyers went away. And the magnitude of overbidding in red, the frequency of overbidding reporting in the blue. You can see those are more reasonable numbers, but that's lagging data. So in another 5 weeks, those will probably be lower. These are comparing apples and apples, but now we're looking back in time since we're back in July looking at June pricing. And that's something I guess I should point out. I think it was just this week that the Mercury did the article about pricing from May to June being the biggest drop we've ever had. I'm already reporting closings data for the month of July. So I'm a whole month ahead of where the media is reporting, and that's one advantage. What I'm doing now is doing a little preview of, I think, where I'm going. And this is for Santa Clara County single family homes only. I think I'll do this for the macro data. I'm going to try to be consistent with my data from 2013 through 2022. So the 10 most recent years, not worrying about COVID, because that's one of the advantages of median. The real high, real low numbers don't impact your reference number because you're using the middle number. And so now what we're looking at is days on unsold inventory. Since this is the first time we've seen it, and what I'm trying to do is make the graphs more consistent and report the relevant information. And I think I've accomplished that. If you're in the red, you're in a red hot seller's marketplace. And this was actually data for going all the way back to 2010, I think. So I went back and was given, actually it might be all the way back to 2000 even. I was trying to give you a history. So let's go on to the current data where we can really confirm what we're talking about. If you're in the red, the shaded red, you're in a red hot seller's marketplace. The purple is the current data. You can see we're not in the shaded area, but we're below 80, so we're not in the blue shaded area either. You can also see that it rolled over. The orange is the percent of the median. You can see that the percentage has dropped down fairly significantly. So what I'm looking at is going to look at the raw count in the purple, the percentage in yellow, and then the gray line is going to be the median. So you can see where we should be down here if we're having a typical year. You can see where we actually are, and you can see what percent of normal we are. So now we're moving on to offers accepted. This is what the first slide should have looked like. So it should have gone back to 2013, the 10 years that I have data for. The data is the purple line. The gray line is your reference line, your median line. So that's going to be the same for the 10 years that are up here. Going forward, that will change because I'll be dropping off the oldest 10 years and adding the new line. So going forward, there'll be a little change in the gray line, but it will still be your reference line. And then your orange line is the percentage that you read off of the right axis. Here, offers accepted, we can see we're only accepting about 80% of the offers that we'd expect. We're down here, we're accepting less than 700 offers at a time when you'd expect to be selling about 1,150. Here now is the same data just blown out. You can see I do have a bad data point that I'll trace down. The concept's the same, but now I'm just going back to the beginning of 2020 so you can see the scale a little bit. You can see the data is down and it's improving, which is good. You know, here's where we were going downhill and then you improve. That's the percentage. So the percentage came down and the percentage is increasing. Now we're back to overbidding. So we're going to do one data slide, one data metric. We're going to go back to 2013 to give you history. And then we're going to go to the next slide that gives you the recent 2.5 years. So here you can see how dramatic purple line is the drop off in the magnitude of overbidding. You can see the percentage drops off so dramatically, and you can see where the percentage would normally be. The reason I'm doing percentage is when the median is flat here for basically April to July, it's easy to tell in the plot similarly. But here where your reference point is decreasing, it's hard to tell, is the current data getting better or worse? And that's what the percentage is telling you. So basically, once we started going downhill, and you could pick this point here sometime right around the beginning of May, or you could actually even come back here. And this is the earliest point, which is one reason I'm plotting the data the way I am, is the market actually turned sometime back in March, which is the earliest I have thrown that date out. Now, if there was a major event around April the 2nd, April the 9th, I could say this is the slump of TFTs coming back, but I don't know of any major event that happened at the beginning of April. Now we're moving on to overbid frequency. Frequency is going to change less than the magnitude. And you can see it's coming down, but it hasn't come down as dramatically, and it hasn't leveled off and turned around yet. So it's basically lagging behind a little bit the magnitude of overbidding, which is why I have it that in this order. Here's the last 2.5 years. You can see the raw data plummeting down. You can see the percentage plummeting down. The normal decrease is happening now. That would be your normal summer slump. What we're having now is much more severe, and that's why the percentage decrease is going down as well. Here's inventory. Inventory is one of the least significant, and that's why it's at the end, even though it's active listings. You can see the raw data here is coming down, so the available inventory is coming down, but inventory is normally going up, and this is the 10-year data, so it's really hard, and I'm missing the axis. I'll have to pay better attention to that. So here is where we're at. So now we're only the last 2.5 years. So the data inventory is basically going down a little bit. It normally goes down a little bit, but we're going down a little bit more, and that's why the percentage is turned around and going negative. So this is an example of why I'm plotting percentage. If you just looked at this purple line and looked at your gray line, it would be hard to tell. Is the purple line dropping down more than the gray line or what? And the percentage, the orange line, is what tells you, since it's rolled over and going down, it's telling you that the current data is dropping by more than it normally drops. Here's your sold price. So here's your historical numbers. So you can look at in the different 10 percentile, median percent, and 90 percentile. And then in the last 2.5, do I not have? I guess I don't have the last 2.5 years. So you got to be careful here. If we come down here, here's January of 2022. We're basically down to the same price point on the expensive areas as we were in January of 22. And you could actually come back here to about April of 2021 and say we're at roughly the same level. If you go for the median, I would say it's somewhere right around here, somewhere around January of 2022. 2021 prices aren't much below that. We saw some appreciation in the table, and I would make the same argument for single family. And with that, for questions, if anyone's got anything, and I'd love feedback on those new graphs. If I got them finalized, would it make it more uniform and easier to look at having?
I like it, but I would like it to include San Mateo County.
It will. It will be the 4 count. It will be consistent across all my metrics. So it would be the 4 counties, and then I would go down to macro data and look at the different components. And I'm thinking I could go through more data more rapidly because the slides would be the same. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right. See everybody next week.
Richard,
Yeah, go ahead.